Hey everyone, and welcome back to the studio. Today, I'm going to demonstrate how I paint green grapes. This process shares a lot of similarities to how I paint red grapes. You can check that video out as well, but these present their own set of challenges. Let's go. First off, I'll spread a thin coat of liquid medium over the surface of my panel. Once the panel is prepped, I'll begin by massing in the form of this cluster of grapes. I don't want to use my typical line drawing mixture of umber and black. That dark paint would only interfere with the bright, pure greens that I want to show here. Instead, I'll mix a combination of cadmium lemon, ivory black, yellow ochre, and touches of raw umber and orange to warm it up. What I'm going for is a nice warm green that will serve as a mass of mid-tone for these grapes. Once I'm happy with the color and the value, I'll begin by blocking in the shape of the cluster. I'll find an outer edge of a grape, then mass in the form behind it. I don't want to draw each and every outline. I want to represent these as one continuous mass, which I'll then pull individual grapes out of with certain details. There's a shadow being cast onto the grapes in the background, so I'll darken the paint that I'm using with more black and raw umber. I don't want this to be too dark, there's still a lot of light passing through these, but the rear grape in shadow helps show depth in the cluster as a whole. This depth is emphasized further by the little grape just in front of the one in shadow on the right. I'll use some of both of the umbers and black to paint the shadows being cast by the grapes on the table. This anchors everything to the surface and gives this block of color some context. I want the hanging grape on the right to be slightly different than the rest, so I'll warm it up with more cadmium orange and yellow ochre. As with red grapes, I don't want each of these to be exactly the same across the board. Variations in color temperature will give this fairly mundane bunch of grapes some extra interest. Now I'll use a cooler green, which just means that I use more lemon yellow than orange. I'll block in the leftmost grape that is slightly in the foreground and give it a cast shadow as well. At this point, I could go in two different directions, either start rendering grapes to pull form out of the mass, or block in the background. I felt that I needed the context of the background color and value to more accurately render individual grapes, so I'll work on that first. Lots of raw umber and ochre here, with touches of black to cool it down slightly. I wanted a darker background that reflected all of the green glow that I see coming off of the fruit. I'll mix a large quantity of this with a good amount of medium to thin it out, collect it into a more manageable pile, and then begin blocking in the background. To start showing some glow bouncing into the background, I'll slowly introduce more cadmium lemon into the background mixture to lighten and saturate it more. You'll notice I flipped the panel to make sure that I could be precise with my brushstrokes around the form of the grapes. I also want a bit of that glow to reflect into the foreground of the table, so I'll use a similar mixture of paints to show that. This really helps push the sense of light bouncing off and refracting through these bright green grapes. I'll also darken the background a bit as it moves away from the center of interest. This really helps draw the viewer's eye to the bright green of the cluster. Just a bit more raw umber and black into the background color to get this effect. Now that I have the entire background in place for some context, I'll start pulling individual grapes out with some refracted light. I'll brighten up 4 of them to start with, including that warmer one on the right, by introducing more cadmium lemon and orange into the mix. More orange for the warmer grape to warm that one up. What this refracted light is showing is that light is passing through the translucent grape and is emerging on the opposite side. The highlight will be left of center on the light side, so the refracted light will be a gentle gradient from mid-tone to light on the lower right side of each grape. I don't want each grape to have equal refracted light. I choose a few in the foreground to be the brightest in this way, and let those in the background be much more subtle. With those 4 brightened up, I'll jump into painting the dust, which is also known as bloom, on the surface of the grapes. Ivory black, titanium yellow, and touches of ochre and white will give me a very bright, desaturated, and dusty kind of green. With my detail brush, I'll use this dust to define the edges of certain grapes. This is what really pulls them forward out of the cluster by showing that three-dimensional form on the light side. Using careful, gentle brushwork, I'll start rendering this dust. This will be brightest around the highlight and will meld softly down into the green of the grape as it turns away and darkens. Once this dust is in place, I'll add the main highlights to these select grapes by mixing a bit of white and titanium yellow. As I continue rendering the bloom here, I just want to point out a few key things. You'll notice that I'm not covering every inch of these grapes with this dust. I'm only selecting certain areas. This gives them a nice sense of texture. There's a nice little shadow being cast on the smallest grape on the right. I'll show this by only painting the sliver of the dust that's actually catching light. This is a really nice effect because it shows that all of the grapes are interacting. I'm also being very careful to only make a few select brush strokes, wipe my brush, and then return with fresh paint. Too many brush strokes will drag all of that green paint around, and you'll end up with a mushy, ill-defined mess. I don't want each of these grapes to be equally rendered either. Those in the back or in shadow will have little to no information compared to those in the foreground. Because that hanging grape is warmer than the others, I want the dust on it to be warmer as well. I'll simply add more ochre to my existing dust mixture and render it the exact same way as the rest of the cluster. I'll also erase the shape of the stem using a paint eraser tool. I also boost the glow in the background, adding more cadmium lemon into my background mixture and letting it blend softly up and away from the grapes. Same deal for the reflected light on the table. I want that to be brighter as well. Again, just a bit more cadmium lemon into my original mixture to show that glow hitting the table surface in key areas, then letting it meld into the surroundings. The stem is a combination of ochre, burnt sienna, burnt umber, and black in varying degrees. It has a nice gradient from that warm, ochre-y tone to more of a green, so I'll throw in some of the grape color as the stem moves away from the cluster. From here, I'll come back and adjust a few edges, cleaning up some of the messier brushwork and redefining the shape of certain things. I also do another pass on the cast shadows, making sure that the shape is correct and the edges meld softly into the background. I often feel that green grapes benefit from a second sitting once things have dried, but this first sitting really captured that glow that I was going for. As we take a closer look at the brushwork, I want to thank you all, as always, for watching. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see me paint next, and I'll catch you all in the next one.